Welcome back to my channel, BookedBookshelf. Today, we're reviewing The Heart of Betrayal by Mary A. Pearson. I'm going to start this out saying some points of this review will be spoiler-free and other points will not. I'll let you guys know when the spoilers begin so you can click around them and just get to the general brief synopsis that you guys want to know if I like the book or not. So, as a brief summary of the last book, I liked it a lot. I liked the first book a lot. I liked The Kiss of Deception quite a lot. I've heard other people say that they didn't enjoy the first half of Kiss of Deception and needed to pick up a bit and then they enjoyed it, but I was actually the opposite, where I really enjoyed the entire book thoroughly, and then the second half had me really shocked about what happened. I was not expecting who was who. And so I actually really enjoyed that. And I was super excited to read The Heart of Betrayal. So, here's what I think. Overall, I'm going to rate The Heart of Betrayal. It's actually a little tough for me to rate because there are aspects of the book I really enjoyed, but then there were aspects of the book I didn't enjoy so much. So my overall rating, I think I'm tentatively going to give it a 2.9 out of 5 stars, perhaps on the edge just 3 out of 5, perhaps. But let's talk about what got to me, what didn't. So what I really liked about this book was there was a lot of world building that I really appreciated. I really liked that we got to see Venda and what the people were like and the culture that existed there. I was super excited that Pearson fleshed it out, and we saw glimpses of how they felt about food, the fact that they were a struggling people. I really enjoyed that we saw that mesh into their culture. And that's kind of a big thing for me, world building wise. I love seeing how the land influences the culture, because that's what happens with real people, I'm Native American, so that really resonates with me, seeing how the culture has been impacted by the land that they're on. Secondly, for world building, I really like that we had little bits of the language here and there. Pearson took an effort to develop, at least written wise, bits of language, and I did really like that. I said the same about the first book when we saw little bits of the Morganese language and a little bit of Vendan being spoke. I enjoyed that a lot. I also enjoyed it in this book. I really liked the Commissar. I really liked the leader of Venda. I thought he was a super compelling villain, and I don't mean this in a way that I say, oh my god, he's so awesome. I don't mean it like that. I mean you could see moments where he's kind, and then you could see moments when he's outright villainous. And I really like villains who are structured in this way, because it makes them super interesting to read. His very presence felt threatening, and I really liked that. Pearson wrote the area that the main character Leah was in, and she wrote it really well. So of course, I can't actually really review this too effectively without spoilers, because it's a second book in a series. And so from this point on, I'm gonna say it's no longer spoiler free. I'm gonna be mentioning tiny bits of detail, but when the real spoilers come in, I will let you know to stop listening. Mostly the spoilers for this section will be me talking about Leah's place in Venda, what it's like. I can no longer hide who's the assassin and who's the prince, so if you haven't read the first book, I strongly discourage you from watching any further. So, as we know, Caden is the assassin and Rafe is the prince, and I actually really like that, and I really enjoyed the development of Caden's character in this book. I didn't necessarily like Caden, and I thought he was really selfish for bringing Leah here to a place where honestly, she would have been better off dead than coming here. She's been put in a really crap position, and Caden did it selfishly because he loved her and he wanted her to live. Even if it was as a slave by his side, he was okay with that. And I enjoyed the moral ambiguity there, but also I disliked him for that reason. Just because I say that I dislike a character, as a person, doesn't mean I don't really enjoy the character and how they're written. And I did really enjoy Caden in this book. I found his moral conflict super compelling, because he has this conflict of, his loyalty to Venda, which comes from the Commissar saving his life, and his loyalty to Leah, because he's discovering that he forgot the kindness of the Morganese people, and Leah brought that back into his life. And so being confronted with that again, it created like such a good moral dilemma in him that I really actually enjoyed reading it. I enjoyed Leah piecing together bits of the past of the world she's in, and I have so many questions. Like, my kind of theory going on is that this is taking place after some huge apocalypse on Earth or something, like the ancients are actually like us in the 21st century, but I could be completely wrong. It's just like, that's kind of my theory, which is going on, because like the way they describe the ruins and such things, like it seems almost that way. I may be completely wrong, guys, though. Don't like come and skewer me. I really liked Aster's character. She's like the embodiment of another part of Venda and how Venda's culture and society is. We see another aspect of who the people are through Aster. Aster's kind, but she's witty and she's able to run around and know her way through the sanctum. I want to believe that the main area that Leah's kept in is called the sanctum. I may be wrong though. And I really enjoyed seeing Aster as like an embodiment of what people of Venda are like, other than just ruthless barbarians and soldiers. Like, we saw a whole nother aspect. I really enjoyed her character. Now, the things I didn't like. This book was really, really slow. And, like, I liked it, but it felt like it took me forever to get to the most exciting part of the book, which is the last 50 pages. And honestly, this book is... Give me a second. I don't want to lie to you on page length. This book is 473 pages. And for me to have to read 420 pages to get to the interesting part of the book, that's just not... It's not that it's bad storytelling, because I really did enjoy the book, but it just felt very slow building. Kind of like how I felt reading the second Game of Thrones book. Interesting, fascinating characters, but it takes so long for anything to happen. And that always kind of just makes me feel like I'm crawling when I'm trying to read through these books. I do feel like these books are strongly character-driven, which those are my favorite kind of narratives. But also the interesting thing about the Remnant Chronicles is these books are also very environment-driven and very history-driven. Like, the plot is based on... You could tell that the plot is being influenced by the very things that happened perhaps hundreds of years ago. I do not believe they've ever said when the ancients existed, when Morrigan fled and led people to the Holy Land. I don't believe that's ever been mentioned in the book for how long of a time gap has gone by, but I think it's implied it's been like hundreds of years. At least 200 years is kind of my guess. So I really like that this is a strong character-driven book, but also like a strong world-building kind of driven book, and I really like that. I love world-building. I like Rafe a lot as a character, but his involvement in this book was almost a little boring. Like, I understand that this was Caden's book. Like, we're supposed to be really getting to know Caden's character here. And I think we'll get to know more about Rafe in the next book. But it just felt a little like... how fast that Rafe and Leah fell in love in the first book, that felt very quick to me. And so to come into this book, to have them kind of separated, not able to interact, but only like spare glances for each other, like super sparingly, it just felt a little distant. And that's not, like, that was the point of it, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, but I didn't enjoy how little there was to do with him. His involvement at all in some scenes almost felt unnecessary, and he was just there as a reminder to Leah about, you know, we're trapped here together. I liked some of his involvement towards the end of the book, and I liked almost his friends more than I enjoyed him in this book, and like I said, it felt like there's very little Rafe. And this isn't really a criticism, it's just more of a personal preference. I would have liked to see a little more from his point of view. Not necessarily Leah interacting with him more, but just a little more from his point of view. Okay, now, into the spoilers. This is full-on spoilers from this part. No longer watch if you haven't read the book or you don't want spoilers, but like, here I go. why did Aster have to die? I was so sad. I loved her so much. And she was so ruthlessly killed. And I understand, like, I know why it happened. We were being shown how heartless the Commissar truly is when it comes to his goals. It was really sad because we saw, like, a child, poor, trying to make a better life for her clan. We saw her suffering in the name of her country. And in an attempt to keep Leah still there, even though she very much liked Leah and was trying to help her escape. It was just very sad. And I was very happy when Leah just went ham and began to stab the Commissar after that. Though I do not believe he's dead. We didn't see him die. She just left him there as he was like gasping for breath and trying to yell orders. And then Grizz held up her hand and said she was the new Commissar. I don't actually think he's dead because I think that would be too easy. Though I guess Malik becoming the next Commissar could be a way to keep the plot still going. I think it's super interesting that, like, Venda's cause is very just for what they're doing. Like, the Commissar, you can understand where he's coming from, because he wants to make a better place for his people, but there's, like, greed behind that. There's something behind his eyes that, you know, is more about saving people. It's almost like he's using that for an excuse for his own goals. And so I actually really like that. Like I said, I really like his character. I was super sad about how Aster died, though. I really enjoyed the escape plan. I liked discovering Rafe's friends towards the end of the book and, like, seeing that Jeb was bringing around patties to each cell and, like, I really liked their inclusion, and I actually thought their plan was quite genius. I really liked it. It felt crazy enough for me to be like, oh, these guys are insane, but it was, like, crazy in that kind of, like, holy crap, this is awesome kind of way, and I really liked them for that reason. Leah's escape, my heart was, like, booming the entire time I was reading it. Like, reading from her going up to tell the last verses of Venda's songs, and then realizing that at one point she's gonna be sacrificed according to an insane woman who was singing on the edges of some cliffs one day. And I don't know, it was just really thrilling. Pearson really knew how to write the last 50 pages in a way that had my mind going nuts. I loved the ending to the book. And I'm super excited to start the next book, and I'm like jittery and eager. There was another thing I didn't like. I felt a little bit about halfway through when the Commissar, like, dramatically announced he would be marrying Leah. I felt that was kind of a cop-out in a way. Well, not a cop-out, but it felt like Pearson was trying to use the same, like, oh, huzzah, plot twist she used in the last book. But I saw it coming. And that's the issue. In the last book, I didn't see the big plot twist coming. In this book, it was really obvious that it was leading up to that. And so it was kind of disappointing that it didn't hit me as hard as I wanted it to. On the same kind of, I guess, tune, Caden being revealed to be Morganese kind of felt cheap in that sort of way too, because, like, I knew that was coming. The only way and the only reason he would hate nobility that much is if he'd been somehow personally hurt by them, and so I'm like, he's got to be Morganese. There's got to be a reason, and lo and behold, he was. And I do really feel for his childhood. That frickin' sucks, and I do feel bad for him. I just don't always like his decisions. I hope in the next book, I hope he's not dead, because the end of this book kind of leaves it in a, he might have escaped, he might not, but I really hope he's not dead. Oh, he could be the Commissar in the next book if the Commissar did die, though I'm not convinced he did. Like, so much could happen. I really hope he's not dead, because I would like to see more of him, and I'd like to see maybe him redeeming himself for taking Leah there, or maybe some more depth to his character. Like, there's so much I want to see in the next book. I'm super excited. Again, on that note, still not clear how her mother managed to block her from getting the gift, and I said this in my review of the first book. I'm pretty sure, based on this book and a couple places, that it has to do with the tattoo that's on her shoulder. But how? Like, how? This would have had to be blocked since she was young. A sudden tattoo on her shoulder wouldn't actively block it any times. Like, you get what I mean? Like, there's so much time before this moment that it would have had to be blocked. So I'm, like, still trying to figure out how her mother did that. And I think if she does ever end up getting back to home, we'll probably discover that in the third book. And so I'm super excited for that. Still kind of curious about the tiger in the first book. No resolution to that yet in the second book. Curious as to why it just left when she told it to. Maybe we'll see something of that in the third book. Maybe that'll just be something that's never kind of touched on again, which is kind of disappointing because I felt like she had some kind of magic gift to talking to animals there, and I would have liked to know. Alright, so yeah, after talking about it, I'm going to stick with my review of 3 out of 5 stars. There are points of this book that are really gripping and interesting. The world building, the last 50 pages, like, a lot of it really gives it that 3 stars, but it does take a really long time to get going. In a lot of ways, my big problem with this book and why it's not like a 4 out of 5 is because it feels like a stepping stone between book 1 and book 3, though I don't know what happens in book 3 yet. It feels like a second act that wasn't quite fulfilled very well. I'm kind of hoping that the third book kind of makes up for some of the slowness of this book. But anyways, keep reading, guys, and I'll see you next time.